Did you understand what she was saying? What if this was your only way to communicate with someone? Only 250,000 people know sign language out of the 318.9 million people living in America today. I conducted an interview with two deaf-mute Americans. First, Brenda will tell us her personal story in a letter that I will be reading.
Brenda was the first in her family to be born deaf. She was born to hearing parents and was sent to Jane Brooks School for the Deaf in Chickasha, Oklahoma. She rarely saw her family and felt isolated from her other siblings. Thanks to the Paris Conference of 1900 that declared all deaf children should learn how to lip read so they can fit into society, Brenda was now forced to begin to try and read the lips of her teachers in constructing her own meaning, since she could never be too sure. In her letter, she states it was hard to have the everyday conversations when you are just reading the lips and guessing what the other is saying. She asked to go back home and attend public school. School was always a challenge, so she started going during the summer and winter holidays to be able to finish earlier. She felt lip reading was not letting her fully interact with others, and being mute, she almost always had to find something to write on to communicate with, since it was hard for her to move her lips in the same way, and not everyone else knew how to lip read. She decided to learn ASL and had a hard time even trying to find anyone to teach her. She finally found a church that was teaching the language, and there she met her husband. Larry was born hearing, but after being sick as a child was left deaf. He taught her sign language, and she states he really had to teach her English again in meaning. And soon they were married with 3 children. After having some medical issues, she had to have a hysterectomy, but after the surgery there were some complications and she ended up back in the doctor's office. When she went in to discuss options in the situation, the nurses would not let her hearing child into the doctor's office to translate for her due to insurance policies, and there was not a translator present in the office and none of the employees knew the language. So she left with little understanding of her new medications and began taking them with little questions asked. In her letter, she describes that she went back to the doctor feeling frustrated. She was feeling even more irritable and worse. The doctor tried their best to understand her, but things began getting heated, and next thing she knew, she was being sent to a mental institution for treatment, where she stayed until the medicine she was given was out of her system. It turns out the doctor misunderstood her symptoms and gave her too high of a dosage of hormones. This medicine really affected her body and mind. She mentions that it would be normal to assume that she no longer has any trust in doctors and that some people would have sued in the situation, but after going through this, she learned that this is actually quite common for deaf people to go through. She has met 6 other people so far that have gone through this similar situation. So what if ASL was taught at more schools? Statistics show that if ASL was taught at as many places as Spanish was, odds are that someone in the doctor's office would have known sign language, or at least the basics.
Some people say that now, since we have advanced technology, it is no longer needed to have ASL. But when we are only communicating through typed messages, it can be hard to hear the sarcasm or hurt. We are also taking away the social interaction, the personal feel of that conversation that provides meaning. It is a basic human right to be able to have the opportunity to communicate with everyone. Joshua is a deaf-mute American that has his MBA. He has lived in different states and has been through many different programs. In his interview, through text messages, he focuses more on the educational side of this argument. While interviewing Joshua via text messages, I first asked him, in general, what is your opinion on having more classes provided to teach ASL? He then explains why ASL should even be considered a language. ASL is a visual perceived language. With signing, the brain processes linguistic information through the eyes. ASL is a language with its own rules of grammar and syntax. Next, I asked, do you believe that there are enough classes being taught for ASL? He responded, absolutely not. When we do find a class being taught, it is most likely through a church, and the teacher never went to school to learn the language, but is typically more self-taught. There are currently 25 million deaf people in the world today, and there is simply not enough education for them all. Lastly, I asked, do you have any last questions, thoughts, or opinions? And he responded, the deaf culture has the term autism. This is the notion that one feels superior based on one's ability to hear.
American Sign Language is now the third most used language in America, right under Spanish and French. There is a need for this class, even if we are not deaf ourselves and do not know anyone that is. If an accident occurred or we lost our hearing over time, this would be a way of communication. It wasn't until recently that sign language was even recognized. The United States still treats deafness as a predominantly matter of public health and social welfare over a social and linguistic phenomenon within the general population. U.S. lists deafness as a disability. Dr. Paddy Ladd is the leader for the deaf in Britain. He states, "When we wish for the recognition of our right to exist as a linguistic minority group, labeling us as a disabled group demonstrates a failure to understand that we are not disabled in any way within our own country. If a deaf person is viewed with the construct of disability, they become sensitive to the differences in what they can do and what hearing people can do."
Deaf Americans have a high rate of depression. The psychologists state that this is because they feel segregated from society due to the communication barrier. It is unethical for us to not provide the opportunity for students to learn ASL. The University of Oklahoma provides Choctaw classes and not ASL, when we are more likely to come in contact with someone who speaks American Sign Language over the Choctaw language. Currently, only 1% of American educational systems provide sign language classes and allow for it to act as a foreign language credit. With over 23 million deaf Americans that rely on sign language, the class should be offered since it will enrich our community and help us see everyone as one instead of segregating any individual that is different from the majority. Here is an interview with the University of Oklahoma student. Do you think OU needs to provide an ASL class?
Absolutely. I know a lot of people back home where I live. I met a couple here. There's a lot of deaf people that I know from, like I said, back home, or I met here as students that I talk to, and it's a very broken conversation, whether it be through text or they're trying to read my lips. I'm trying to understand what they're talking about. It's like I said, it's very broken, mismatched conversation to where we're just trying to piece together what each other is saying. And if there was an ASL course that would teach the basics like the alphabet or basic conversational words or sentences, it would be a lot easier because I could talk to them without trying to guess and piece together what they're saying.
Would you take the class at OU as your foreign language credit?
Absolutely, because of the fact that, like I said before, I have friends back home or here that it's a very broken conversation. I don't feel like we're knowing fully what the other person's saying, and this would definitely help break that language barrier between the both of us, to where day-to-day basis you can understand what they're saying, like at the grocery store or at the doctor's office or anywhere of that nature, to where it's very vital to know what a deaf mute person is saying, and that language barrier is kind of there. So if it was taught as your foreign language credit, I honestly think that it would really break that language